Welcome to the Light Gate. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana, from the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 FM and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We're coming to you from Facebook, Roku, Rumble, and YouTube. We have a wonderful guest today, and we are actually in a pre-record because our guest is from England, and it's very late. Scotland, excuse me. Anyway, so here's Preston. Go, honey, go.
Thank you, Dolly. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Big shout out to our sponsor, Carnation. We love you very much. So we truly appreciate your support, and thank you very much for that. And yeah, hello, everyone. So excited you could join us on our Monday night, The Light Gate. This is episode 110, so we're now well over 2 years into this, and just having a ball talking to all these amazing guests. And our guest tonight is somebody I've watched for quite some time. There's not a lot of people who've been in this field for as long as he has. He's a man after my own heart because he covers not only UFOs, but the entire range of paranormal phenomena. As I'm sure you guys know, because we've talked about this a lot, all of this stuff is certainly connected. And yeah, this is a pre-record. Normally, I'd say hello to all you folks in chat. I know you're there. We love you very much. We will be in chat when this show airs, so that'll be a lot of fun. At any rate, let's just get right to our guest, who is the amazing and accomplished Malcom Robinson. You haven't heard of him? I don't know where you've been, because he is amazing. I'll just tell you a little bit about him in case you haven't heard of him. Here is his bio. Malcom Robinson is an established public speaker, presenter, scriptwriter, and the founder of the UK organization Strange Phenomena Investigations. That's way back in 1979. So that shows you how long he's been at this. He's the assistant editor of the excellent publication Outer Limits magazine. This is so interesting. He's one of only a handful of people on this planet who have gone down into the murky depths of Loch Ness in a submarine in search of the Loch Ness Monster. Now, after having some encounters, well, I'm not sure, we'll have to ask him, but he became interested in UFOs and the paranormal, and before long became one of Scotland's leading UFO researchers and authors. He has personally experienced a wide range of paranormal phenomena, has spoken all over the world, appeared on numerous radio and television programs, and has worked as a consultant for many TV programs featuring UFOs and the paranormal. He has written many books about UFOs and the paranormal, and these are just some of them, including UFO Case Files of Scotland, Volumes 1 and 2, The Monsters of Loch Ness, Paranormal Case Files of Great Britain, Volumes 1 through 4. Get that. The Dechmont Woods UFO Incident, so famous. I really would love to talk a little bit about that. Another book is Please Leave Us Alone, the true and terrifying story of an Irish family, and it's a long title. And more recently, the Bonnybridge UFO Enigma, the Falkland Hill UFO Incident, and most recently, I think this is the latest one, the A70 UFO Incident. And as he writes, my purpose is to collect, research, and publish accounts relating to most aspects of strange phenomena, and to purposefully endeavor to try and account for what at present eludes us. So yeah, definitely a man after my own heart. Let's bring him in. I'm excited. Hold on one second.
Welcome.
Hi, Malcom.
Hello there, Preston. Hi, Dolly.
Hey.
Amazing. Wow, you've been at this forever. So how long have you been researching this?
Well, officially it was 1979. That's when I set up Strange Phenomena Investigations. But it's fair to say that I've been involved in the subject for well before that. You know, as a young boy growing up in Scotland, I always had this fascination for all things weird and wonderful. But like I say to many, many people, I was not convinced. You know, I was truly, truly skeptical. I did not believe there were things such as ghosts, poltergeists, UFOs, lake monsters, Sasquatches. But it's like anything else in life. once you get your hands dirty, once you put your foot in that ballpark, once you talk to the witnesses, you soon find that there's no smoke without fire. And yes, there may be, charlatans out there, people out to pull the wool over your eyes, but in the main, there's many, many people with a myriad of strange, paranormal, ghostly tales. And it's to those people that myself and my colleagues at SPI are really looking forward to speaking to. And we're still doing that. So quite a long time, to be honest with you, yes.
Wow. So that's interesting to me because I came into this field as a complete skeptic. I was 21 years old, so pretty young. I had that advantage. But absolutely just blew my mind to find out, my family had seen UFOs and, of course, ghostly encounters and so forth. But I know you had some early experiences, so I'm a little puzzled about that. You talked about having a UFO encounter as, was it junior high or primary school?
Yeah, it was primary school. I mean, just to set the scene for that, Preston, I mean, I started...
Oh.
He dropped out.
I know.
Darn it.
That's okay. We'll just wait a second. Let's see if he comes back. Send him a message real quick.
All right.
We had a big sun event last night and it was going to cause problems. Hold on.
All right.
And that part of Europe is extremely vulnerable to what happened last night. So, oh gosh.
It'll take just a second. I'm sure I'm going to let him. I'm sure he knows he popped out. So I'm going to give him a second, but let me just email him here just in case. Because.
Do it up on Messenger, I think.
Let's see here. Oh, here's his email. Gosh, I really want to talk to this guy. He's had so many experiences.
I know. Oh, there he is. Bring him back.
All right.
You there.
These things happen.
Yeah, as I was saying, I mean, just to set the scene for that very first UFO encounter, I've always been interested in this subject, but when I was a young boy growing up in Scotland, I started to watch shows like The Outer Limits, The Twilight Zone, B-movies like the Day the Earth Stood Still, The War of the Worlds. All these movies and shows fueled my passion and fire for this subject. It was absolutely astonishing. And then, of course, Star Trek, the wonderful Star Trek, and all these different shows was just great. But to answer your question, it was I was probably about 9 or 10 years of age, and I was playing football in a school playing fields with some of my friends, and it was a beautiful Scottish summer's day, not a cloud in the sky. And we looked up and we saw this egg-shaped device about 15 to 20 feet long. And I knew, even as a young boy, I knew straight away this was something bizarre. This was something unusual. And all my friends got fed up of this, and they took their gaze away from it. But I was still mesmerized by this, And then I took my eyes off it for a few seconds, looked up again, what's coming? It was gone, completely disappeared. And I think when you have these early experiences, even at that young age, it kind of, as I said a moment ago, it fuels your fire, your passion to say, well, what is going on here? Truly, what's behind all this, So that was the first one. That was the first one that really...
Well, can we back up a second? How low was it and how big?
Yeah, it was probably
hard to say, but
150 feet above our heads.
Was it metallic?
It was white. It's hard to say if it was metallic because it was like a whitish color, but it was about 25 feet in length, and but it was clearly solid. It wasn't a balloon. It wasn't anything of that nature. And it just, one minute it was there, the next minute it was gone. And to this day, I still find it very puzzling,
Were you thinking UFO at the time?
Well, I was just about 9 years of age. I didn't even know what a UFO truly was at that time, because in Scotland, there were nothing really at that time on the television or the newspapers, really. You know, it wasn't until maybe about 5, 6, 7 years later that I started to read about these things. I started to watch these programs, etc. So I didn't know. All I did know that this wasn't a helicopter. This was not an aircraft of any shape or form. And in that regard, I just knew that I was looking at something very strange. Yeah.
Wow.
Did your friends talk about it with you afterwards? Did you all have any conversations about it?
Yeah, we did. I mean, obviously it's many years ago now, Dolly, but we did. We spoke about it, and they just thought it was a balloon or something, but it wasn't. It wasn't a balloon, you know. And they didn't put too much stock on this. But for some reason, myself at that early age, I just felt that no, this is above anything else.
Yeah. What year was it?
Oh God, you're probably looking at 1961, 62.
Okay.
No, I tell a lie. Hold on. That would have been 68, 69. I tell a lie. 68, 69.
What year were you born?
1957.
Okay, so you're older than me. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it was just one of these things that just captivates your interest. And
what you got was a drone. That is an ET drone. That's exactly what you're describing to me.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was deliberate. They were watching you.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds intentional for it to be that
Very
low.
intentional. If they just turned away from it like it didn't matter, and you're standing there transfixed and just like, wow, even though they remember seeing it, it was for you. That was deliberate.
I certainly like to think that, you know, because obviously, I mean, I started off skeptical, but now I'm absolutely convinced that we're dealing with something real, something non-human, something off Earth. It's always been with us through time immemorial. They may have bases in the planet, i.e. under the oceans, in the Mariana Trench. A lot of UFOs have been seen exiting and entering the waters around the island of Puerto Rico. So they don't necessarily have to be extraterrestrial, although they could be. I think they may be. I go along with kind of Jacques Vallée and the interdimensional theory, and whether that's right or wrong, but for me, I think it's more extra-dimensional, you know, but they've always had a presence here. It's the agenda. It's the agenda. What is the reason, and we can come to that in the show, what is the reason behind these sightings, behind all these UFO abductions? And that's the one that we can deliberate as we go through the show today.
All right, so that was your first, but you had another one not long after that, right?
Well, I've had a few growing up, yeah. I mean, I remember we were up at Loch Ness because being Scottish, Loch Ness is very, very dear to me, you know, our water beastie. And I was up there to interview various witnesses who had claimed to have seen Nessie. And we were sharing a campfire at the shores of Invermoriston, which is on the shores of Loch Ness. And it was a lovely Scottish night. It was about 10:30 in the evening, so dark, beautiful myriad of stars pervading the whole heavens. And we're sharing a campfire with American, Canadians, French people, and just talking about Nessie. And then suddenly this lady screamed out, "What the hell is that?" And we looked, and across Loch Ness, you could see the shadow of the hills because it was dark. And you saw this ball of light, this massive ball of light, which was moving up, down, sideways. And again, we knew it wasn't an aircraft, a helicopter or anything like that. And we were mesmerized, absolutely mesmerized by these strange maneuvers that this thing was doing. And then it stopped, stayed stationary for maybe 10, 15 seconds, and whizzed away and sky was gone. Now, we, like any UFO society, you have to dot the I's and cross the T's. Now, what I mean by that is we checked with the local police to see if any members of the public had reported a sighting in that area.
Right.
We checked with the airports, national airports, local airports, provisional flying clubs to see if there were any air traffic in the vicinity as well. We checked with the Ministry of Defence in England to see if there were any air exercises ongoing. And we checked with the the weather centres, you know, the meteorological stations to see if there were any weather balloons. So we're ticking off all these, you know, these possibilities. There were nothing.
Well,
Nothing
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you have any nuclear facilities near Loch Ness?
Not nuclear as such. I mean, Faslane is an American military base in the west of Scotland, and the Americans had a lot of nuclear submarines there.
Yeah.
Not so much now. I think that they've moved that away, but who knows? Maybe secretly they're still operating a nuclear facility somewhere within the confines of Scotland.
Yeah.
And because I'm well aware of where you're going with that, Dolly, you know, we all know we all know that UFOs have been seen above silos. The Minuteman missiles have switched off nuclear warheads. So that is a concern for any government, be it the UK, America, or Canada.
Yeah, the ET likes to keep abreast, or they watch very closely all nuclear capabilities of everybody worldwide. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And there's more of it going on than you know, way more. Okay. And that's a probe. You're describing what a probe does, and it's generally the type that come down around nuclear events and stuff like that. So there might have been something going on that you all don't know about, and if there wasn't, they denied it to you, that would be normal behavior on their part, you know? How long did it last? I mean, how many minutes total did it last?
Oh, you're probably only looking at about 8 or 9 minutes, but 8 or 9 minutes, Dolly, is a substantial amount
Yes,
of time.
it is. Very substantial. They were really looking at something.
Yeah.
How far away was it?
Oh, God. Probably about a quarter of a mile away.
Yeah.
But it was very big, very bright, you know.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of another UFO that I saw when I was about 16 or 17. I was on holiday down in England. Mm-hmm. And I was in a romantic interlude with this young lady. And that's all I'm saying. And it was late at night. And I saw, now, this was weird. It was like scaffolding, you know, scaffolding outside a house, the pipes and tubes. It was it was horizontal. Yes, it was moving slowly across the sky. There were no substance to this. It was just pipes. It was like a scaffolding. There were no lights.
Wow.
There were depth to it, you know. And again, it's just another crazy aspect of these UFO sightings, that they come in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah. One of the things that I have experience with, okay, is that all ET craft can array. In other words, they can make you see what they want you to see. All right. The craft are completely capable of showing you anything. And they'll do that to either be unobtrusive or as much unobtrusive. Was it a daylight sighting, that one?
Yes.
That absolutely. Okay. They would have done that during the daylight. And what color was the array?
Well, it was a white light.
Very white. Yeah. Yeah. At night, they usually show yellow. If they're going to do that weird scaffolding look, that usually shows up yellow for some reason. But during the day, they're bright white. And how long was that one? I mean, was it moving fast or slow?
That was, although it was moving slow, it crossed from north to south in a matter of about a minute. So it was still fast over the horizon, because we were looking out to sea as well, where we were. It was at a wee place called Skegness in England, facing the sea. So it was, but, you know, I've never heard of anybody else seeing a UFO just with pipes.
Yeah. Now let me ask you a question. Do you have geological movement of the ground in Scotland? Do you all experience earthquakes or anything like that?
Very, very minuscule. Nothing like other parts of the world, you know. Yeah. And I'm talking about 1 to 2. So that's nothing. And that's very, very rare, very infrequent. So, you know, I don't know if it's anything to do with that, earth lights or anything like that.
How long ago was this sighting? What year?
That particular one would be 1976.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, what's interesting to me is you're having, you know, quite a few encounters at a young age.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder if it's intentional, and did they have any idea that, you know, you would be, you know, such a prominent figure in the field?
I'll give you another one, Preston. I've not finished yet. I was up at Altby in Wester Ross. Beautiful, beautiful part of Scotland. The reason I was there was a gentleman says, Malcolm, I'm using a torch to flash into the night sky.
Ooh.
And I'm getting bursts of light coming down. Would you like to come up and see this? Absolutely, you know. So I travelled from my home in central Scotland away up to Western Ross, and I met this guy. He was a lovely, lovely man. No airs or graces. He was sharp as a tack. And we jumped in his car and we drove into the wilds of Scotland. Beautiful. And it was a lovely starry night as well. And he got his torch and he says, Malcolm, this is all I do. Click, 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 click. And then suddenly, you could not make this up. Within about 15 seconds, this column of light, that's all it was, a column of light, descended down from the sky. And I've called it like a rope ladder of light. If you had one of those flimsy rope ladders and you threw it over a wall, it would come down, 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 down like that. And I'm looking at that. I'm amazed, you know, I'm standing shocked. I had my camera, my binoculars, my camera around my neck. And I didn't even take a photograph.
Right,
By the time I came
yeah.
out of that reverie, I did take the camera, but it was gone.
Yeah.
So light phenomena, it's not always, you know, full-bodied craft as such. You know, a lot of UFO sightings people may not always know it is a light phenomena, light-based phenomena.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's so unusual because the light is coming down slowly. So light doesn't normally do that.
Right. Was the torch a regular flashlight or was it a laser torch?
Good question, Dolly. It was a normal flashlight. So it wasn't a laser. It was just an old-fashioned normal.
And how often did he do this? Did he explain to you how often he did this?
Well, he lived in that area, so he was right into UFO subject, and he was doing that on a regular basis. And I would say 8 times out of 10, he got a response overnight. Sometimes he didn't get anything.
Did he have any more contact than that? Did he ever talk about being more involved in contact than that?
He said he felt a presence because he stayed in a caravan in the wilds of Scotland, and he felt an unearthly presence which he could not see, but he could determine that there was something sharing that space with him certain occasion. Now, whether that's spiritual or ufological, we truly don't know.
I can tell you that on my journeys, I had an area that we worked in. Okay, just so you know, I've learned to pilot ET craft. I was taught to fly, and I've flown many years. Okay, and one of the things that we do is we had regular places where we hung out because we had people that we were taking care of and watching very closely. And it wasn't that we were experimenting on them or anything. It's just that it was fascinating to see them evolving and using their abilities. Okay. And we try to have regular communion, conversations with them. I have a feeling he knew more than he was telling you. And I also have a feeling that if he had one responding that quickly, they were around him a lot. They can go thousands of miles in 3 seconds. Okay. Yeah. And your conscious ability to transmit your thoughts, there's no space time in between that. It goes straight through. It's like 2 points of contact miles apart, but suddenly both of you know what you're thinking. Okay. And if he was looking and he was getting ready to pop that flashlight off, they already knew it and zoomed over for him, which I was capable of doing. And then dropping the light like that, that's a point. That's an immediate, we would do things like that because we were giving you information. He was probably, I'm not kidding you. You should contact me and say, how much do you know about this subject that you don't tell me, and get him to really open up to you, if he's still around, because he was being taught by them, psychically taught, and they're just hanging out, waiting for their opportunities for him to do that along with everybody else in that area. And
what's interesting to me is that, this is basically a CE5.
Yep.
Human initiated well before, this was popular. I mean, what year was that?
That would be 1994, because I was doing the Loch Ness submarine dive that year. So it was, that
was right when the whole CE5 movement really started to take off.
Yeah.
It's funny because you say that, Preston. Incredibly, we at SPI, our society, have never ever done the CE5 protocols until we're doing that next month. We've got a big skywatch somewhere in Scotland And for the first time ever, we're going to try that and try and draw them in. We have a lady, Dolly, you're a fascinating lady yourself, but we have a lady in Scotland, Tress Blair, and she claims she's not from here. This is not our planet. She's from a planet called Sakruma, and she regularly travels there, just like you mentioned yourself, Dolly, a moment ago. And do I think that's crazy? No, I don't. No, I don't. Because I believe there are a number of walk-ins and people who have this facility and ability to go with these beings. It sounds preposterous, it sounds crazy, but I never, ever, ever throw the baby out with the bathwater, because nothing surprises me in this world anymore.
Yeah. I want you to do me a favor, okay? Because it's important in these days right now where we're at in history, okay?
Yeah.
That if somebody wants to plan something like that, switch the tables around. Y'all plan to be somewhere else other than where she wants you to go, and say, we're going to bring you over here instead. It's more important for you to be here.
Yeah.
And take her away from where she wants you to go. Because there are three things that you have to prove right off the bat. One is the legitimacy of it. And if somebody's planned something well in advance, that gives them the ability to be coercion, to lie, to plug in certain things to make you believe something that's not real. So you turn the tables on them, okay? And you say, all right, well, we're just going to go here instead. You need to come here. However she reacts to that, watch carefully, because she may say, no, I can't do that, and stop. And then you go, nope, not dealing with it. Bring her somewhere else, okay? The reason I'm telling you this is that I know for a fact that ETs cannot fly here right now. They've been gone for 2 years. And that everything everybody sees now is fully governmental. And there are reasons for that. And I want you to look it up, because this is provable information. All right. Our planet is changing its poles. Our sun is in super magnetic high polarity right now. We're in sunspot high right now, maximum. Where everything that's happening to our planet is not global warming. It is our planet reacting to an entire solar system of issues because of our sun. All the planets have changed their polarity. They're all flipping their poles. So is the sun. And it is because energetically in our galaxy, our system is going through a huge magnetic field shift, energy wave. Okay.
Right.
It happens every 12,000 years, and we're in the middle of it. And it has caused our magnetosphere to go down 40 to 50% now. It's very messed up. And more the sun's energy and energy from the cosmic around us is getting into our planet, and it's causing unbelievable problems. And there's a whole list, and I'm going to give them to you after the show so you can look it up. Okay. One of the issues is that they can't fly here because the way their technology is vulnerable to it, just like ours is. You know how when we have solar flares and CMEs and coronal hole, our electronics go boop. Okay.
Yeah.
They fly magnetically, and our magnetic field guidelines are wonky right now because they're moving in directions that they don't normally do. They're going crazy. They're chaotic. They have to have a stable field line to fly on to be inside our magnetosphere. Since that's why they've started having crashes 100 years ago. And about 2 years ago, that was the end of it. It was like they would have been crashing every day. There's no way they could stay here. And as a pilot for them, I know this extensively, can explain it in full living color. Okay.
All right. Well, let's get back to.
Wait. So, and I'm telling you, anybody that says they're here and they give you weeks in advance of proving that they're here, you need to go, let's think about this. And you need to do scientific method. And that means taking her away from where she wants to plant it and putting it where you want it. That takes her out of the element, and it makes it, if it's real, it will happen. And I'm telling you.
Well, here's my next question.
Right.
So you're having all these experiences, and you're still pretty young. What brought you to actually, start writing about this, forming a UFO group, or actually a phenomena group?
In 1979, that was the year when I founded Strange Phenomena Investigations. And that was founded on the back of one of Scotland's biggest UFO cases, and that was the Dechmont Woods case, which I'm happy to tell you in a moment. I just felt at that time, Scotland didn't have anything. We didn't have any UFO groups or nothing. And I, with the help of Ron Halliday, another fellow Scottish researcher,
Oh,
we
yeah.
formed SPI, and we started to get people coming to local pubs for a wee meeting and stuff. And then I was getting so many people coming to me with stories. I went, well, what am I going to do with this? And first and foremost, I ensured that those stories were correct and true. And then I put them into books because I just felt that other people had to find out about these stories. You know, you don't make money out of books. You don't.
Yeah.
You know that, Preston.
Yeah.
And when I give lectures, people come off the stage and they'll say, Mr. Robinson, I haven't even told my own husband about this, but I'm going to tell you. And they unload all these wonderful stories. So these stories have got to get out in book form. And there may be someday somewhere in England or Scotland or Canada or America can go, I can relate to that. That happened to me. Because when we speak about the A70 case shortly, the A70 case, which was Scotland's first reported UFO abduction, it had a lot of the sameness, but a lot of differences as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to me how many people keep these kinds of experiences, secret to even their own spouses.
Well, we were all trained very early not to talk about it because you were crazy if you did.
The thing is, we have to remember, folks, is this.
There's
for every one person who comes forward with a UFO sighting, there may have been 5 people with that person who also saw the UFO but don't want to come forward for fear of ridicule. Right. You're shown on screen now the front cover of the A70 UFO Incident. It's, as I mentioned a moment ago, it's Scotland's first reported UFO abduction. Now, there may well be others, but if they are, they're keeping it quiet. Massive story. So I'll be very brief for those who are not aware of this case. 2 men, Gary Wood and his friend Colin Wright, were driving in their car from Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland, and were travelling to a small village called Turbrax in South Lanarkshire. Now, when you leave the built-up city of Edinburgh with the granite buildings, you eventually go down the A70, and it's farmland. Farms, sheep, cattle, for miles, hardly any houses at all. So they're driving down this small B road. B road means it's not a heavy, it's not a big travelled road. And as they're travelling down this, Colin, who was on the passenger side, said to Gary, "What's that? What on earth is that?" Now, about 400 yards along the road, hovering 20 feet above the surface of the road, with this large, jet black metallic 2-tiered object, shiny black, hovering above the surface of the road. And these guys had no interest in UFOs. They had heard about it like we all have, but they didn't have an interest in this. And they went, "What is that? Is it a helicopter? Is it an aircraft? What the hell is that?" Yeah. So rather than stop the car and go back, they continued their journey. So if you can imagine, my hand is the UFO, this is a car. And as the car was directly underneath this object emitted this heavy silver shimmering curtain, a sparkly like effect, hit the roof of the car. And as it did so, both men were enveloped in total and inky blackness. They couldn't see their hands in front of their face. They couldn't see the dashboard of the car. They couldn't see each other. Are we dead? Is this what death feels like? Then about seconds later, but we don't truly know how long, thank God they regained their sight. The car was on the wrong side of the road. They had to pull the car back to this side of the road, and they just got away from that area.
I can imagine,
When they went to the destination, they knocked on the occupant's door who they were going to see. No answer. No answer. Eventually, the lady of the house opened a window and went, "What time do you call this? You're an hour and a half late. The journey should only have taken 30, 35 minutes. And they were an hour and a half later than that. So they rushed into the house, said to the occupants of the house, "Oh, we've seen this crazy, it must be one of these UFOs." And of course, they got laughed out of court. Don't be silly. There are no such things as that. Now, that night, They had both men had strange dreams of these small grey beings. We all know what they look like: 3.5, 4 feet tall, large pear-shaped head, black inky almond-shaped eyes, coming into their dream world. And then they found scars on their body that previously were not there, scoop-like mark scars. Gary was made fun of at his work, as was Colin. Both men's wives and girlfriend did not believe them. They thought he was making it up. So they had a very, very hard time in trying to convince anybody of the reality of what they saw. So what do we do, Gary says? He decided to go to his library in Edinburgh, and he went to the UFO Paranormal section, and he picked out a book by the wonderful Jenny Randalls, a British authoress. And my address was in the back of that book, so, as usual. And so they contacted me. And at that time, I advocated the use of hypnotic regression as a tool to lift the sluice gates of the mind and release any potential, possible, hidden subconscious memory. Gary and Colin, are you happy to go under hypnosis? Malcom, we'll try anything. We need to know what happened. Please, can we do it? So we took them independently back to that night, an August evening of 1992. Both men told the very same story with differences. So I'll try and be brief because it is a long story. So the conscious recall was only ever seeing that UFO above the road, conscious. Under hypnosis, this is what they said. The car was stopped. It was stopped on the road. They were approached by several small grey beings and taken out of the car. Now, I mentioned that some of this case is different from worldwide European events because Gary was placed on a floating stretcher. I've never heard of that before. He was not held. He was not supported on a floating stretcher.
I know of a few cases of that, actually.
Do you?
Oh,
wow. Yeah, I need to speak to you about that, Preston. I never knew that. So they were taken on board, presumably this object. They were stripped naked. We'll start with Gary. Gary found himself completely naked, lying on a raised table, and he says, Malcom, I couldn't move a muscle. I could only move my eyes. I desperately wanted to punch one of these wee grey guys. I couldn't move. Two of them were around the foot of his bed, this table, and one of them were holding a pendulum-like pulsating light moving around his body. And he says, Malcom, it was like somebody's hand was inside my stomach and pulling my entrails. The pain was tremendous. Also at that time, he says, there was like a can, if you can imagine a can of beans, only about 3 feet tall. And it came up from the floor to his head. And there was a lever raised up with two small red LED lights. And it started to spin around his head. Purpose? Who knows? Was it a medical device? Who knows? Also, as you looked above him, there was this black, like a oinks-shaped circular piece of metal, free floating above him. And he also claimed he was lying and he could see, that was crazy this, he could see the floor of this object kind of bubbling like a man's shaving gel. And what? And coming out of this was one of these small grey beings. Now, under hypnosis, after hypnosis, we got the guys to draw these things. And I says, you've drawn what appears to be ribs on these greys. Do you think they were ribs? No, Malcom. I think they could have been possibly heavy folds of skin. So that was interesting. Now, some of these greys, I mentioned the similarities and the differences. The differences, some of these greys had a red, yellow and blue lines under their face. It was like perforations of a fish's gills, you know, a fish with the gills, little flaps. I've never heard of that. I don't know if you have, Preston or Dolly.
Not really, no.
So that was weird. And some of the creatures on board this craft were small brown ones with heavy wrinkles, folded skin as well. Colin, Gary's friend, found himself in a kind of curved chair. He was completely naked, and a device came down from the ceiling with like a needle, and it went in the side of his eye, not into his eye, at the side of his eye. And he also found himself encased in a glass or perspex chamber. If you can imagine a long tube, and he was sitting, he was naked, he was strapped, and he says, Malcom, I couldn't move. Like Gary, he could only move his eyes, but he saw to the left and he saw to the right similar containers with naked males and females, young and old. And there was like a misty effect pervading the whole of these canisters. And at that point, it started to freeze up. This canister, this chamber started to freeze up, and he says, I couldn't see out of it, and I started to cry. And as soon as I started to cry, it defrosted again. Now, Gary has actually passed a BBC lie detector test, and I mentioned earlier that his wife at the time did not believe him. One night she phoned me up and she says, Malcom, on the telephone, yes, I want to tell you something. Last night I was lying in my bed. Gary was lying next to me, completely asleep. I was reading a book, closed the book, put it on the bedside table, switched the bedside light off, and within about 20, 30 seconds, small childlike hands grabbed my ankles and pulled me forcibly down the bed. I looked in surprise, and standing at the foot of the bed was 3 small grey beings who'd released my ankles and just melted through the wall. Malcom, I'm so sorry. I firmly believe my husband now. So she was there
wow.
to tell me that, you know. And just while I remember, because there's so much to this story, I've not even scratched the surface. A good few years later, Gary was driving in his car with his 2 sons. This is again away from Edinburgh. And it was getting dark, but it wasn't dark. And then suddenly a massive ball of white light came over the hood of the car and penetrated the glass, the windscreen of the car, and enveloped the whole of the car. And his children were screaming the place down. And Gary, who was the witness in this main case, went, oh, no, not again. No, 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 please. And suddenly it just dissipated and everything was fine. So, and here's something else you may find strange, but I always tell the truth. Always tell the truth. Gary says, Malcom, a few nights ago, I woke up. He says, look, I wasn't sleeping. I woke up and one of these grey beings was standing there in my room. I went, okay, I've got you now. And he jumped out of bed, ran across the bedroom carpet, and he punched this little grey. And he says, Malcom, it was like one of these circus acrobats. He tumbled down and then suddenly regained his height and he rushed towards me, and an explosion of light, it knocked me out. And I woke up on the bedroom floor in the early hours of the morning. And I always remember that. And I've only scratched the surface with this case. And I felt that we had to document that hence the book, the A70 UFO Incident, because it's an incredible case with a lot of similarities to worldwide European cases, but a few differences, you know, with the coloured markings under the eyes, the heavy folds of skin. So very, very bizarre case. And
it's absolutely, you're describing, this is real events that you're describing, okay? And there's 2 types of grays. The small ones, that really, you know, small ones, thinner ones are they're ecological AI, okay? They're independent. They do what they're told to do. They don't do anything else. They're not sentient at all. They're just doing things. And the marks on their eyes are sensors, okay? Medical sensors. The reason he was in a tube and unable to move and it kept frosting up, looked like it frosted up, is because they were considering both of them contaminated for some reason. Because the other grays that were with them, hold on. The smaller one that had the wrinkles, that's a type of gray that they're alive. They're sentient, living grays. Okay, and they mostly work with children, but they will work with adults as well. They had to be protected from any contamination so that they were isolated that way. Okay, their ET is germaphobes again with regards to this, because There are a lot of chemicals in our environments. There's a lot of diseases that we have developed that they don't have, and they protect themselves from it. It's a type of medical shower that they were in. It's a light shower. That's why it looked like frost.
Okay.
Okay, and they were decontaminating them. If you're describing exactly a full-on medical evaluation of them.
Wow.
Okay, and they don't like to terrify people, but we're all brought up to be afraid.
Yeah.
This is the normal thing. And so we overreact to stuff, and we from our perspective, we see things in a different light, okay, than they really actually are. But you're describing an absolutely full-on medical examination of them.
Wow.
And the reasons for it are serious, because if it was in the 90s, is that when it happened?
Yeah, 1992. Yes.
Yeah, by then we were already experiencing problems because our magnetosphere was already down. We're taking huge hits of gamma radiation. Everybody's starting to have medical problems, heart problems, mental, autoimmune disorders, cancers are blooming like crazy, and they're watching us.
Did they have anything unusual medically wise, either of the witnesses?
Well, Gary had a CAT scan, and they found some strange anomalies on that as well, I believe. And Colin had a strange rash that came all over his body, and the doctor said, "We've never seen anything like that. We don't know what type of rash this is. We don't know what caused it." So there was one or two other things as well, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were medical issues. Yeah.
What about as young children? Did either of them have encounters as little kids? Are you aware of?
I'm glad you asked that, because as a young boy, Gary was going to, I think it was a scout hall, and with his friend, and he looked up to a school roof, and lurking behind a chimney was this hideous creature of some description. He says, "Malcolm, I always remember that. I was just a small boy, but I went, what is that? Is it somebody in a costume or something?" He says, "But it was peeking behind this pillar, this chimney." And I think there were one or two other events as well in his early life. And that's the thing, Dolly and Preston. We all know that this is not always a one-off account. It happens in families. It happens when they're young. And, people get implants. Daryl Sim tells us about the implants, etc. I remember when I stayed in London, Daryl Sims was speaking at a conference down there, and he was sharing a house with me and my friends, and he had all this box with all these wee compartments of these little devices that was found in people's, either in their finger or up their nose, and he was dancing around the table. Look at this, and he's a wonderful character, Daryl. But again, it begs the question, if they're so sophisticated, why would they need to monitor us? And I guess, Dolly, maybe it's to find our bodies, to see how we're getting on with our health. I don't know.
Yeah, no, they're actually trying to hold us up physically, because we're facing events where all our health determines whether we're going to make it through it or not. And the reason they're not here is for these events. They can't be here because of the problems with our magnetosphere. They just can't fly. But once they come and finish, people who are left are going to be picked up. They're going to show up worldwide, land and say, "Get on and make a rescue." This happens every 12,000 years. It is a cycle. And you have to be alive to get picked up after this. And
that's what I've heard from other cases. These implants are really health related.
Yeah, absolutely. They monitor people's health, and they watch a lot of the scans that they do of the planet. They're watching the evolution of the pole change. Our planet's upheaving and doing things. Our mantle is breaking loose right now. It's all kinds of things, and there is scientific as well as humanitarian to us. We are related to them, by the way. We are not. We're all related to them, all of us. Okay, and it is. It's just the way we're here to learn things. We got put on this planet because we're evolving. You have a soul, right? You know that your consciousness, that this body is just something you're indwelling. You're here to learn. All right. You're here to evolve.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use a lot of terminology around here that's absolutely wrong. We're not here to raise our frequency. That is not how that works. We're here to become wise, employ the wisdom that we've learned. Okay. And then move on with that. And ET, we've been denied our full use of our abilities by things that they put into our environments on purpose, like fluoride. I know fluoride's not really used in Europe. I'm glad for y'all. It's probably why you have better contact than we do, to be honest. I think y'all don't talk about it as much as we do, which is sad. And I wish there was more. And you're doing a great job, by the way, honestly, of reporting this and researching it out. It is important now everybody catch up with the truth of what's going on, because worldwide the knowledge of all this has been suppressed. The governments of the world have not been forthcoming. You know that. It's like dragging, you can't, they're just not going to tell you the truth. And they know that's the problem. They know what's going on. They know what's happening, and they keep it away from everybody.
Has the Scottish government been at all forthcoming with the subject?
Well, I mean, there's a big story with that as well. Obviously, Bonnybridge councillor Billy Buchanan and there was a massive sightings of UFOs over the Stirlingshire area of Bonnybridge in Scotland back in the 90s. It's still happening. And we demanded that the British government open up a governmental inquiry into these sightings. And myself and Councillor Buchanan have been down to 10 Downing Street on numerous occasions. We've met up with various prime ministers, Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, Rishi Sunak, etc., saying you've got to do something here. As we know, America re-released their files and under the Freedom of Information Act, and that proved to myself, and I dare say you, that the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA have been actively involved in this research for many, many years. And so when the British government started to release their files, we could clearly see that they know something is going on. Now, the problem we've got is a lot of these papers, I've said it before, a lot of these documents are heavily blacked out, paragraph after paragraph.
Yep.
Now, they can't all be the witnesses' names and address, because that only take up a little bit. This is what's behind the blacked out. What's behind that? I honestly believe, and same as yourself, Dolly and Preston, that by God, the governments of this world do indeed know far more than they're letting on. Now, whether they're in cahoots with them,
no, not at all.
It's a debatable.
Yeah. Do you remember our President Eisenhower? Yes?
Indeed, yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to backtrack you. President Truman, he started the clamp down on information. It began with him. Okay. He's the one that locked the doors to everybody.
Yeah.
He thought he was protecting us because they were mortally afraid of what was going on. They didn't understand it yet. They knew it was happening. They had scientists giving them information, and he just locked down on it. And he created what is known today as the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower, who was a general, knew about it. And the last thing he said as he left his presidency was, beware of the military-industrial complex, because they're already running the show. He gave a direct warning to humanity that it's already a problem and you all need to wake up to that. He was trying to tell people the truth. He was trying to protect his family from being slaughtered, over it. There are plenty of people in the military and in the government who are aware of all of this. There really is a military-industrial complex. They are now worldwide. They've infiltrated everybody. They run all the banks, all the money, all of it. We're kind of at their mercy over this. Now, understand that ETs have had crashes because of our environment causing them. Our magnetosphere going down. It's very hard to fly when suddenly you've got no magnetic resonance going between you and the ground, and you drop. They're like us. They're fallible. The third dimension is, I'm going to use the word, they let me use it. It decapitates in the third dimension. Everything falls apart. Everything, including ET craft while they're here. All right.
Yeah.
So they've back engineered all this technology, the trillions of dollars that have disappeared in this country.
That's the black budget.
Every major country like Europe, England, Ireland, Scotland.
They're all cooperating.
They're all part of it. Okay. And they've been re-engineering all this stuff. So now what you don't realize is that they have created craft that mimic ET craft faultlessly almost. They don't have the same energy use because they can't. They don't have the technology to climb up that high in their abilities. But they fly. They're anti-grav. They can do many things, and they're loaded with things like laser cannons, sound weaponry, all kinds of stuff. All right. So ask yourself. Just think about this for a second. everything that we've developed as humanity on this planet has been weaponized. Everything. Now they've taken ET technology, which is benign. Trust me, it's benign. They've never found a weapon on a single craft that they back engineer, not at all. And we have people who can prove that. All right. We're going to have somebody on Monday night, well, tonight, who can, well, where we're at now, who has documented this, heavily documented this, has proof. All right.
Yeah, Michael Schratt. You've probably heard of him. He's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And the many
Great.
pilots that I've spoken to over my lifetime know this as well. Why weaponize everything? Why do the governments, why are they so paranoid? Well, there is a reason why. There is an absolute reason why. And I noticed that Europe is not really caught up with this yet, and I want y'all to catch up with it. All right.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to talk about it now because it's huge. It's a huge subject.
Yeah, we got a lot of subjects to cover.
And you need time to digest what I'm going to send you. You really do. But there is a reason. There's an absolute reason. And what you're seeing in the skies now is not ET. It is them.
Well, I've always said that. In other interviews, I've said, you know, not everything in the skies is extraterrestrial. I think it's our own black budget technology.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The stealth aircraft was flying in America for a good number of years, and it gave rise to many false UFO reports, you know, this triangle-shaped craft. So, again, whether there is indeed any collaboration between this back engineering, which I accept that you're saying that, Dolly, you know, but clearly, yeah, there a lot of stuff up there is our own stuff, but not at all, because some of the objects my witnesses have seen blend in and blend out with the
Yeah, they have that technology as well. That's what I'm telling you. They have that technology. It's more advanced than you could possibly imagine. When you get a craft and it's downed and you start going into the technology of it, you can mimic it. We're great at building, back engineering anything. That is a human gift, I guess, including what they can do. And arraying is one of them. You know, light technology, light communications technology is part of that. And that was in its infancy in the 60s and the 70s. Laser technology in the 60s and 70s. I remember being in school, and you have to understand that I'm a military brat. My father was a lieutenant colonel, airborne ranger. He also worked for NASA. Okay, he had unbelievable jobs for the military industrial complex. I grew up in that environment. I was sitting in the 3rd grade and they brought a laser in and showed it to all of us. Now you got to understand that I went to a school of gifted children. All right. And I'm standing there thinking, why are they bringing us in here? They wanted to see how we'd react to it. Okay. Oh boy, did they get reactions from us. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, most of the technology we see is, you know,
we were being
years
primed.
behind what the military actually has.
We were being primed to go in a certain direction in our lives and learn and do things. And I watched plenty of people that I grew up with do exactly that. Geniuses, real geniuses, doing stuff. And then so look, research that in your country, because I guarantee you we're not the only ones. Your country is involved as well. Okay, you have to follow the dots, follow the trail of information, because the governments aren't going to give you, the redactions are real. They're not going to tell you the whole truth. It's plausibility, and plausible deniability that are the problem. And it's because they have an agenda, they have a narrative, and they're forcing you to learn it their way, not the real way.
All right. Before we move on to, you know, beyond this, I want to just recommend this book to people. It is amazing. It's so detailed. What I like about this is a multiple witness case. You know, there's aren't a lot of them out there, but a really great, well done, Malcolm. So thanks very much for sharing that. But I'm also super interested in this other case, which is world famous and just different from your average UFO encounter. I'd love it if you could talk a little bit about the Dechmont Woods UFO Incident.
Absolutely. It is Scotland's probably the most famous case. Again, massive, big cases. I'll try and be brief. Forestry worker Robert Taylor, he was aged 61 at the time. He was employed by the Livingston Development Corporation in the central belt of Scotland. And his job was to ensure that no cattle or sheep strayed into this forest. Now, he was a war hero. He went over to France, D-Day 5, and he helped liberate Bergen-Belsen. So he was a war hero. He was a fantastic guy. And I've met him many times. Sadly, he's passed the spirit now. Oh. But when he resettled back in Scotland, he went to near Pitlochry first. Then he moved to a little place called Deans near Livingston. And Livingston's about a few miles away from Edinburgh. So it's in the central belt of Scotland. Like many people, he had no interest in UFOs. He had heard about it like we all have. And all that changed. All that changed on the morning of November the 9th, 1979. He jumped into his pickup truck. He was accompanied on this ride into the forest with his Irish red setter dog, Lara. Beautiful, beautiful dog. So they drove up to the forest, jumped out of the truck and started walking down this forestry path. Trees to the left, trees to the right, walking down. Eventually that leads up to a small clearing and he was absolutely gobsmacked. He looked up and about 20, 30 feet above the surface of the ground was this dome-shaped object with a flange going around its perimeter, coming up from the flange with these cross-like projections. And he's looking at this and he was absolutely astonished. And his dog was barking furiously beside him. And then it de-solidified. And he could see the young trees in the background. Then it solidified again. And then it was going in and out all the time. And then suddenly, as if this whole scenario couldn't get any more bizarre, it did. Because what happened next was what resembled 2 Second World War sea mines. Those spherical spears with the spikes sticking out that bobbed up and down the North Atlantic. Any ship that would touch it, bang, resembled that. 2 of them dropped down from beneath this object, impacted onto the grass and started rolling across the grass towards him. Now, you have on screen there a depiction of what he saw. Now, this depiction is always presented. He never saw 4 supporting legs. He only saw this flange and the dome-shaped craft. He also never saw what appeared to be portholes. This was done by a police sketch artist, presuming, a UFO must be portholes. So he put that. He never saw that. He never saw the legs. So you're really only looking at the dome, the flange, these propeller-like things. Now, this is 2 of these things, these mines, descended from beneath this craft and impacted on the grass and started rolling across the grass towards him. They stopped and they projected these spikes towards this person, each side of his hips, and pulled him very, very forcibly.
So weird.
And just at that point, he remembers a horrible burning smell pervading the whole woods. It was like burning brake lines if you sharply put your foot on the brake of your car and the smell comes up through the footwell. And then he heard a swishing sound and what? He lost consciousness. Now, when he regained consciousness, he had a nasty graze under his chin. He had a graze on his forehead. He had a pounding headache. He had a terrible thirst. His trousers were torn, which I have here in my office here. I've got them somewhere. And his jersey was muddy. And he looked at the grass. And there were over 40 holes impressed within the fabric of the grass. Triangular and circular impressions and 2 track-like, ladder-like marks, which had not been there before. So he stumbled back to his pickup truck to get the radio base. He needed help. He couldn't speak. He had lost his voice. Then somehow his truck, he reversed into a little ditch and the back wheels are spinning. He couldn't get out. So he had to struggle all the way back to his wife in Deans. Now, when his wife saw him, she went, "What the heck has happened to you?" Because her husband had this graze there. He's all dirty. His trousers were ripped. And he said, "I've been attacked. You've been attacked by men, not by a spaceship thing." And she says, "Look, come inside. There's no such thing as a spaceship. You must have fell and hit your head." And then about a minute later, she went, "Wait a minute. I've been married to this man for over 30 years. He would never make up a story like that." So she got the local doctor. The doctor attended the family house, and he checked the heart, etc. It was quite elevated. He was excited, you know, and he saw the mark under his chin and on his head, and the trousers are all ripped. And he says, "Look, you need to go to the local hospital to get checked out." And he didn't want. He says, "Okay." So he went to the local hospital, waited. He waited 2 hours. Nobody came near him. So he discharged himself from hospital without being seen. And then at that time, he went back to his home, and his wife had phoned her husband's boss, the main forestry boss, and Malcolm Drummond, I think his name was. So both men went up to Dechmont Woods, and Bob says, "There, look, there on the grass, look at it." So clearly these marks were there. Now, the police became involved. Why? Because it was an assault by person or persons unknown. So I have interviewed a number of police officers who attended that scene, and one of them, Detective Sergeant Ian Wark, says, "Malcolm, it was like a crime scene. I've never seen so many police officers around this area." He says it was like a murder had taken place. So the Forestry Commission had fenced off the area to preserve that area, for a lot of people were looking at all these marks, etc. And the trousers were forensically analysed by a police chief forensic scientist. And he said to me, "Malcolm, these trousers were ripped in an upwards mechanical manner. They were not ripped by any forest debris like sharp stones or twigs or barbed wire. These were pulled very, very heavily up when the person was wearing this." And, you know, Bob's past his spirit now, but he always said, "Malcolm, oh God, how I wish you had have seen what I saw that day, and how I wish that my dog could speak, you know." Now, here's the thing. A few years ago, I had a gentleman approach me, and he said, "Malcolm, I saw something very bizarre in Dechmont Woods the other night." So this is the story he told me. He says, it's away from the main part of this area. This is a good few years later, a good 20 years later. He's walking these big husky dogs with a friend. These big dogs are not scared of anything, and they're walking through Dechmont Woods at night. And then suddenly this gentleman sees a ball of light moving fast about 100 yards in front of him. Well, what was that? Then his dog stopped, and they started to back up, and they were snarling. I went, "Whoa." He says, "Malcolm, my dogs, they don't react like that. They've no fear at all." And they were backing up and going backwards. And then says, "Malcolm, suddenly I saw what I can only describe as a dog man. This man who was humanoid in shape, furry legs, furry chest, but he had a snout, and these menacing red eyes." And I absolutely was shocked beyond the core. And then suddenly this thing just shot off. And this is the thing with these woods. There've been missing people going there, missing animals, etc. Now that's the first time I've heard about this dogman creature. We've all heard that in these tales. And you know, back in 1993, with the help of the Livingston Development Corporation, we had a big stone monument and a brass plaque placed there to commemorate this. And then a few years ago, with the help of the West Lothian Council, we got marker posts, UFO trail this way. And at the site of the location, we've got a big signage, big board saying what happened. Now, the reason we did that, Dolly and Preston, is because we all know about Rendlesham Forest. People were going, oh, thanks for putting that slide up. In Rendlesham Forest, they have signage there. So there were nothing like that. In Dechmont, people were coming from all over the world to this lonely Scottish wood, and they couldn't find the location. So now we've got this notice board, and we also have this big stone cairn. And people have travelled from all over the world to visit this site. And again, I've only scratched the surface of this case, but it's one of Scotland's most amazing cases. And it happened right at the start of my young career. I was only about 21, 1979, and I blew my mind. because I could not
I have a question.
it was.
Did you say he had a rash?
No, he had a graze under his chin and a graze on his.
Okay, so no rash on his body anywhere.
Not as
Okay.
far as I can.
I'm wondering if this is, ET or military, because I don't know that I've ever heard anything like this.
I'm wondering if it's military too. Did anybody do any radiation checks on him or the area?
Yes, there were two guys came up from BUFORA, that's the British UFO Research Association. One of whom was named Andy Collins. He's a famous author, Andrew Collins, and his friend Martin Keatman, and they did that. The radiation levels were slightly elevated at the location. We did a ground trace sample out with the area, and that was just normal background radiation, but it was slightly elevated, not to any great degree.
Okay. Well, here's an important question.
Yeah.
Radiation comes in different flavors, okay?
Okay.
The type of radiation that we have is nothing like ETs at all. It's a different type.
Yeah.
And they can identify which is which. Did they make the distinction whether they thought it was anomalous, like normal for here, or whatever we have, or was it something?
They didn't really, Dolly. No, all they said was just it was elevated, and that could mean anything. Yeah. There were nothing in that area. There's no military bases or anything around there, And when I wrote the book, because I always give alternative explanations, because even though I believe wholeheartedly we're dealing with an alien race of some description, I always like to say to my readers, well, it could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been a stroke. And one of the theories was that a gentleman by the name of David Slater said that perhaps Robert Taylor ingested Atropa belladonna. Now, these are poisonous berries. And if you ingest these berries with any great substance, you could die. Or it could cause hallucinations. Even if you rub them in your hands, it could seep through your hands and affect you.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have physical.
Yeah, it wouldn't put marks in the ground.
Exactly. But there were no history of Atropa belladonna in Dechmont Woods ever.
Yeah. So all right, now I have one more question because I'm kind of trying to clarify this in my head. Is this an area where people and animals weren't allowed to go before this incident or after this incident?
No, good question. No, it's a lovely area, and you have a lot of dog walkers now these days. So it was an accessible area for people in the nearby Deans and Livingston areas just to walk their dogs of an evening. So it was accessible, yeah.
Okay.
And it was near the strange thing is it was near the busy M8 motorway, which goes up to Edinburgh. Now, it's fair to say that on the weeks before and the weeks after, there were numerous UFO sightings seen by different people. And so that gives a wee bit more credence to the main event itself.
Oh, yeah. Such an interesting and unusual case. I don't know any even
one-off like it. Out there. But it's
if you get a moment, I'll go and get the trousers and I'll show you the trousers.
I'd love to see those.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think, Di? Was that ET? Because, I mean, the spikes coming out, I mean, that is so weird. I can't think of, I mean, there are other cases with, metallic orbs and stuff.
I'm going to make a correlation for you, and I'll do it with him coming back because this is an interesting concept that he may have run into something that is directly related to us and not ET, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay, I'm back again. So these are the actual trousers that Robert Taylor wore in that eventful morning of November the 9th, 1979. And I don't know if you can see it so well in this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pull it up, not down. It's not a pull down, it's a pull up. Yeah. Wow.
Grips there on that side.
That's significant.
If something's rolling at you and it's got a spike on it, did the spike have a ball on the end of it, or was it just a spike?
He said it was just like a spike, like little grabber things,
Okay.
And he actually had long johns on underneath these trousers. They were also ripped as well.
Yeah. All right. Let me tell you something. I want you to know. I don't know if you know about all the technology they have now, but they actually have robot dogs. They look like dogs. They're not really dogs, but they can perform like an animal. Okay. And they are stealthy. They use them in the military. They have reasons why they can be equipped with machine guns, mortars, all kinds of stuff. They have a radioactive battery casing. You know, they have bulletproof casing on them to protect their battery area, and they are used in aggressive assaults. And there are more of them than you know. Well, that technology didn't just come out of nowhere. Okay, and in the 90s, this is when they were amping. The militaries were amping using this type of technology, and you know that we had mines underwater because if you touch them, poof, they blew up, right? Land mining is a thing, right? And they did have craft in the 90s, back engineered craft like you're describing. For them to drop two of those and then they roll toward him. Any movement you make, if they have sensors in them, they'll go toward the movement. So if he felt attacked, it means it identified him, especially if he had a truck and a dog barking, it immediately put him in danger's way from it.
Was the dog okay or in any way affected?
I guarantee you that dog backed off. Okay, dogs are more agile. But humans have a tendency to freeze and look at things because they're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. You know, it's the fight or flight syndrome. Yeah. And if you're frightened, you're not going to flee. Okay. If you're not frightened, you're going to run like crazy. And he apparently was frightened by this. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because
understandably. were these little things floating or were they actually touching the ground?
They were touching the ground. They were leaving impressions in the ground. It was rolling.
In the ground, yes. So they were rolling from side to side because of the spikes, yeah.
Yeah, I think that he ran into an experimental situation where our technology did that thing.
What would they be doing out there in the woods?
Because it's out in the middle of nowhere. What do you think?
Well,
they don't do things covert out in the open. They're covert, and they pick their days and they just go for it. And
it was either in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the fact that they cordoned it off, and there were more police there than normal. You know, agents can look like police, trust me. And they cordoned it off. It was that they were, debriefing the situation themselves on site. In other words, they were looking what happened. They looked how every aspect of this is us. Guaranteed it is us. Well, he doesn't do that.
Funnily enough, Dolly, I mean, obviously when the book comes out, you get more witnesses and who were there at the time, but only young boys. This wee boy said to me, Malcom, I remember we had heard about it and, people were talking about it. So me and my friend went up to the woods and we got chased away by military people. And yes. I wish I had known about that. It would have been in the book.
Yeah.
And all these stories of people seeing UFOs after the
before.
Yeah. Isn't that annoying? Every time you put out a book, you get all these other witnesses.
Yeah. It doesn't operate that way, but we do. Absolutely, we do. You know? And
I'd like to obviously show you this as well. Now, what you're looking at here, if I can frame it up.
Yeah,
1993 when we did the cairn ceremony. So down here is the cairn, and that the black person there is our psychic medium at the time, Helen Walters. And I'll bring this up in a moment. I'll tell you the story. She says, so she's standing looking at the woods, and I goes over, Helen, what are you doing? Don't you see them? Don't you see it, Malcom? I says, see what? And what she claimed she saw was a red ball at the bottom of the picture there, moving in and out of the trees. And also, it was like an instantaneous TV screen appeared where she saw the typical grey alien space appear in the tree line. And she was so annoyed that I couldn't see this. And now, the thing is, she was a highly, highly gifted psychic medium. So therefore, it's like dogs and cats. They can see and they can hear frequencies that we don't. So
did she get a message? Did she say it impressed her with a message of any kind?
That's the thing. It didn't, Dolly. No, all she saw was this. And I was like you would have thought that she would have got a message of some substance, but she never got anything. And we were there that day to commemorate in 1993 this stone cairn with a plaque, and I totally believe her. She's been.
Oh, I do too. Absolutely. I'm a psychic. Okay, I'm very, very psychic, and I see energy. I see things. I'm able to communicate telepathically. All of that. Okay, and you're describing a way of seeing something, and you will transmit. They'll send you a a transmission and just show themselves to you. And the TV screen, when you said it's TV screen, poop, there it is. That's how they'll do it. Okay. And it is so weird how they do it. And it's always, you'll see their face. It's like they're making contact with you. If they know you're psychic, they'll say, hey, how you doing? They don't always talk to you, but if you're there commemorating, they were there watching. It's what it is. And they were letting you know that through her. So yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk about some of your ghost research. I mean, this one sounds really interesting. The Sochi poltergeist. Sochi?
Well, basically, again, it's another massive story, and I'll try and be brief. It all started in the autumn of 1960. 11-year-old Virginia Campbell, who stayed with her parents in Moville in County Donegal in Ireland. Her parents said, we're moving to Scotland. I don't want to go, Mum. I don't want to go. No, we're moving to Scotland. So they moved over to Scotland the winter months of 1960 to Park Crescent in central Scotland. It's about 9 miles from Stirling. Stirling is the next biggest city or town. And she didn't want to go. She was leaving her school friends back in Ireland. She was leaving her little dog, Toby, back in Ireland. But she went over with her mother. The father stayed home to sell the family farm. They were, farmers, etc. So he was still in Ireland. The mother sometimes was working at Dollar Academy as a cleaner. So she was just there herself with these strange people who was her mother's cousins. And so within a matter of weeks, she was in a single bed. Her cousin Margaret was in another single bed. And then suddenly they could hear footsteps walking along the linoleum floor that was not carpeted with linoleum, scratching noises. And they became very, very disturbed by that. They couldn't see anything, but they heard all these noises. So they run down the stairs. And as they were running down the stairs, it was like the sound of a heavy medicine ball that you used to get in gymnasiums in the 1960s. Big, you used to throw them, I don't know if you remember this. Yeah. Bang, 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 behind them. Ran into the living room, and they said to, the mother was back from Dollar, and they said to her mother and her sister, etc., you'll never guess what's happening in her room, all these noises. So the mother thought they were just kids making up stories, shooed them up the stair, and as the mother walked into the bedroom, the bed head was moving of its own volition, moving backwards and forwards. And at that point, a big, heavy linen chest that contained, towels, it contained duvets and pillows, started to move across the wall right into the middle of the room and move back again. So much things were happening at that time. There were objects falling off the shelf. There was a vase of flowers which rose up into the air. There was an apple that came out of a fruit bowl, rose up into the air. On one occasion, there was a clock came off the living room cabinet and hit Virginia square in the face. So much was going on, they had to get in the local minister, the Reverend Lund, a man of the cloth, a man of God, and he too heard all these noises. He saw a lot of things moving in the house as well. And he also claimed that he saw the bed covers of Virginia Campbell rippling, as if you had thrown a stone into a quiet mill pond and the concentric ripples reverberating. That was what up.
How old was the daughter?
She was 11 years of age.
Oh, there you go.
I know where you're going with it.
Yeah,
is it her, you think, or the house?
Pissed off that she had to move. No dog. She was angry as hell, and she has abilities. Well, she was doing all of it.
I'll give you my theory in a moment on that. Okay. So it got so bad that they also got in the local doctor, and he too witnessed this heavy linen chest, the lid of it moving up and down. Nobody was near it. Nobody was home. It was going up and down like that. And they saw the rippling effect as well. So if things couldn't get any worse, they did. They moved the child to a different location in central Scotland. It all happened again in a completely different house.
Yeah, completely different home. Problem right there. Yep, he did it. Highly advanced abilities in that kid. Yeah.
And then she
anger
went to
is
school.
what triggers it. Yeah. Anger, that when I was really little, I have abilities like crazy, okay? And I was about 5 and I got mad about something. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose in the house. Everything was moving around, things were flying around. And my father walked straight up to me and he said, "You need to calm down. Come with me." I walked outside with him and he said, "What do you want to do? You want to go swimming? You want to go for a run with daddy? What do you want to do?" He said, "Stop being mad." And I was like, okay. So we went for a run. Running was always my bag with my dad. It calmed right down. I started putting 2 and 2 together by the time I was about 11, 12, because when I got angry, telekinesis was a thing. It happened. Okay. It drove my mother insane. And everybody started remembering to tell Dolly to calm down. It's like, you don't want to see me mad. Crap happens.
Yeah, I think most poltergeist researchers come to this conclusion. Not all.
Apart from me, I don't agree with that, but I'll tell you.
All right, I'm interested.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the little girl then went to the local primary school, the kids' school.
Right.
And back in 1960, there were upwards of 30, 40 kids in a class. So the teacher had given all the classmates an essay to do, so they're all the heads are over the school desk writing away, apart from one little girl, Virginia. The teacher looked up the class and Virginia had her forearms on the desk lid. "Virginia, what are you doing? Stop that at once." And as soon as Virginia lifted her arms up, the desk lid was moving up and down. Nobody was near it. And then there was an empty desk sitting next to Virginia. Rose up several inches off the floor and fell back down again. On another occasion, and I interviewed the teacher, she's past the spirit now herself, but the teacher says, "Malcom, I didn't even know what a poltergeist was. I hadn't even really heard of the name." And then this occasion, Virginia approached the teacher's desk. Now, back in 1960 in a Scottish school, these desks were heavy, big wooden affairs, big chunky desks. And as Virginia approached the desk to put her essay on the teacher's desk, there was a cane lying flat on the teacher's desk. It started to vibrate. Then it stood up vertically and thump, 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 thump down. And at this point, this is even more bizarre. This is a heavy desk. She says, "Malcom," the teacher says, "Malcom, the desk rose up several centimeters off the floor, and whereas my stomach was in the long part of the desk, it spun round, and now my stomach is in the narrow part of the desk." And at that point, there was a vase of tulips that was on a little desk. Screamed off and smashed into the wall. So the teacher, the kids, you can imagine the kids were going frantic. So the teacher went to the door. She said, "Okay, kids, let's. She says, "Malcom, I couldn't open the door. It was like a heavy, invisible man on the other side of the door saying, 'No, you're not getting out.'" She said, "I couldn't open the door." She said, "I had to say to the kids, 'Oh, it must be very windy today.' The door seemed to be jammed and then it released itself. And all these kids tumbled out." Now, to answer your question, Dolly, I do accept that there is a psychokinesis, telekinesis, externalization from people that can be upset. Now, I've been asked this many, many times, and I've got to be honest. I honestly believe that there's so many kids in the United Kingdom going through stress and puberty and this and that, and they're angry with their parents. That we know that. But if it was an energy, a sexual energy, or kids being disruptive, then you would have a poltergeist in every single house in the United Kingdom, because all these stressful kids. So whilst it may happen occasionally, I don't think it's not all the time.
Well, maybe it's people who have mediumistic abilities, because that's one
I
theory I've heard.
was born that way. Okay.
Uncontrolled mediumship is how some people.
Abilities. And I had to learn to control myself throughout my entire life. I expected everybody else to do what I could do. Literally expected it. And it never happened. I've only met one other person in my lifetime, and I was an adult who had my abilities. And it was like I immediately recognized this person for who they were. And it is unfortunate that some of us are more gifted than others, but it's generally always female, but I know that there are males who can do it as well. Okay. It's not.
Oh yeah. Matthew Manning. He was very famous.
Yeah. But
now, did you ever follow up with Virginia to see if she As an
Well,
adult?
this case, I should have mentioned, this case was in 1960. I was born in 1957, so I was only 3. But growing up in my town, I had heard all these tales of this amazing case, and it was investigated by a gentleman that came up from London. So over the years, I've reinvestigated this case. I've spoke to classmates of Virginia, and they went, "Oh my God, I was there, Malcolm. I was there. I saw this myself."
Wow.
And I gave a lecture on this case with the PowerPoint slides, etc., a few years ago on the anniversary of this case. And I says, "Ladies and gentlemen, never mind about me. Welcome to the stage." And it was a young boy that was in the class at the time. He said it as it is. So to have a witness who was there, I could talk about it. I wasn't there. "Welcome to the stage." And I forget the guy's name, but he came up and he says, "Yeah." And he proceeded to tell this large audience exactly what he saw. And it was astonishing. So it was great to have a witness there.
Was she able to levitate? Did anybody ever see her levitate?
Not as far as I'm led to believe, but that's not to say that she didn't.
Okay.
She did have writing on her face and on her chest and her body, strange lettering here.
This is very much like the Exorcist case.
Yeah, but unfortunately, she did it too. Yeah, I can raise a welt on my body anywhere I want to. Okay,
you can still do that?
Yes. Yeah, I can actually. I don't do it because it's painful. It hurts. Okay, you can't self-mark unless it's painful. Your body knows you're marking. You know,
is it like a stigmata type of thing then?
Sort of, yes. And
I wonder if that's related to that. Now that you mention
I had to literally learn not to do it anymore. That's why it'd be so cool to find out where this girl is now, because I went underground after that. My family totally disassociated from everybody. Okay, we didn't have a lot of friends, and the only things that we did were very carefully controlled after that, literally carefully controlled. Because one of the worst things to happen to me in my life was my brother tried to emulate me, my younger brother. I could run down the hall and literally jump up in the air 3-4 feet high, do a midair flip, come down between the couch and the coffee table, do another midair flip and land on my feet. And he was so convinced he could do that. Okay. So convinced. And I could run off the top of the roof and land on my feet. No problem. Okay. Wow. I did many things. Well, my brother tried to do what I did and he broke his leg in 3 places. It was bad.
I mean,
I had unbelievable guilt over that. I taught myself not to do it anymore in front of anybody. Okay. Because I thought if I'm doing this and other people are going to, your little brain when you're young thinks this is my fault. And it was. Okay. In a way.
Well, I should also say that in my research for the book that you've got up on screen there, I found out that in the same side of that street, 3 other houses were haunted as well. And other people, when the Campbell family vacated that house in 1960 or 61, other people obviously stayed in that house over the years, and a number of them had the same phenomena. Now, to answer your question, Preston, you asked what happened. What happened to the wee girl? Well, what we've learned is she moved down to England, initially to Bedford, and then a small town called Kempston. So I tried to locate her, and I put, in the local newspaper, I said I was doing, family research, etc. And anyway, long story short, this lady, 87-year-old lady, phoned me up, and she says, "Malcolm, I know who you're on about. Yes, she's a friend of mine, or she was a friend of mine. She's moved away now. And I never mentioned about a poltergeist." And she says, "Did you know that little girl had a poltergeist in Scotland and it came down to England with her?" I went, "No, I didn't know that. That was news to me, So the point is, we don't know where in Kempston she is. We're trying ever so hard to find her. This 87-year-old lady who contacted me on the phone says they drifted apart, she no longer knows where she stays. And it would be wonderful, wonderful to find out if that little girl can remember all these things and tell us more about it.
I'm sure she. Well, some people just, they just want to live a normal life.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, I want to get to some of your own experiences, Malcolm, because I saw a list of, I had my hair pulled by a ghost once, and I've had a number of my own experience. Because, like you said, you researched this stuff. Like Margaret Mead, an anthropologist, she became a participant of all of it. So you've had some really extraordinary
I've had that many. I've
experiences
got a book
yourself.
here, Bill, so I don't forget. Yes, okay. So where do I start? So many. I remember probably one of the early ones is when I was about 7 or 8 years of age. My mother had came into the living room with a brand new pair of shoes. Got your new pair of shoes. Don't like them. What? I don't like them. I paid a lot of money for them. I don't like them. So I did a naughty thing. I grabbed the shoes and I threw them towards the living room couch or a settee. Clearly, they were going into the where you sit down. Absolutely. They stopped in midair. They rose up and they smashed through the window, the living room window. And my mother went, why did you do that? I went, I didn't. They were going and they didn't bounce off the couch. They didn't bounce off the settee. They just froze in midair, rose up and smashed through the window.
Malcolm, sounds like you have a poltergeist too.
How old were you? Literally, how old were you?
I'd probably be about, as I say, about 7 or 8 or something like that, I think. Yeah.
It sounds exactly like what's happening with Virginia. Just saying.
And then there was when I worked for United Glass. It's a company. It's in Alloa in Clackmannanshire in South Scotland. They manufacture beer bottles. Everybody came to me. Have you seen this, Malcolm, in the newspaper? Have you seen this? Apart from one man, Malcolm, you're off your head. Sorry, there's no such things as ghosts and UFOs. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. He said, but I'll tell you what, Malcolm. See, when I die, and God forbid, it's not for many, many years, but when I die, if there is such a thing as a life after death, I'll come back and let you know. Many, many years passed, and I got up early. You know where I'm going with this. I got up early in the morning, and the house was quiet. My wife, she was sleeping soundly upstairs, and I put the kettle on, and you know how you get that feeling that there's somebody behind you. So I slowly turned round and saw nothing at all. I went, wow, that was crazy. So I went in back to my work, and all my friends, all my workmates are all like this. Why are you so sad, guys? Come on, why are you so sad? Oh, have you not heard? Heard what? Wee Bobby Smith died last night. That was a man who said, if there's such a thing as a life after death, I'll come back. Now, I never saw him, but by God, I felt a distinct presence, somebody looking at me, staring at me. And it was, even today, I'm getting shivers thinking about it, you know.
Wow. Sounds like you have some psychic ability, Malcolm. I'm just saying.
100%.
Well, funny you should say that, because I asked my father and mother about that, and there are a few psychics in their family. And then my father proceeded to tell me the following story, which was that his mother, my gran, she had passed away. So this is what my father said. He says, son, I was in my bed. I wasn't sleeping. I can assure you I wasn't sleeping. The room was in darkness. Then suddenly a beautiful, beautiful blue aquamarine light pervaded the whole room. And I heard my name, Robert, look at me, Robert. And that's my father's name. And he says, son, I was terrified. He says, I don't know why, because it's my mother, but she had died a week or so beforehand, calling my name. So I pulled down the covers and I saw her. She was beautiful. She was gorgeous. She was in this beautiful light.
Yeah.
And the thing is, she says, son, she was about 30 years younger.
Yep. That's how to do it. Yep.
And she said, I passed on. I've just got to go. And then the room slowly went back into blackness. Now she appeared in front of all my uncles, my father's brothers, that same night.
Really psychic family, yeah.
Amazing.
Have you ever decided, like, have you ever tested yourself to figure out how psychic you are and maybe learn how to amplify it a little bit, use it yourself?
Well, I haven't, to be honest with you, Dolly. Maybe I should, you know. I mean, I'm more a researcher. I like to sit in front of witnesses and get their story and find out if they're telling the truth. Because I remember I interviewed a lady once who had seen a lot of ghosts, and I says, "Are you interested in ghosts, madam?" No. And behind her was a bookcase full of ghost books. So you got to be observant. She's telling me she wasn't interest in ghosts, and all the ghost books are behind it.
No,
So
that's
you
the
gotta be-
trademark of psychic to do what you're doing. It's a trademark of psychic ability because you have the ability to hear truth when it's true, and you have the
Yeah.
ability also to know when somebody's flat out telling you a straight lie. Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And if you practice your abilities or, get really comfortable with them, that amplifies so that when you are researching, and it's important because this is your life path. You realize
yeah.
that. Have you ever felt like you were put into this, you chose this, ta-da,
I believe I was.
try it out. Yeah.
I believe I was
Yeah.
put here to do this kind of work. I know that sounds presumptuous, but I really do. I think there was a mission for me and everybody on this planet. There is a purpose for each and every
Very
one of
much
us to be the best that we can be. We could bring in reincarnation. That takes the conversation to a whole new level. But I honestly believe that, I'm a spiritualist. I firmly believe in life after death. It's not even a belief. It's a knowledge. It's a knowing.
Right.
I was going to say,
Thank you.
When I
Perfect
lived in
analogy.
England, I put on lectures in England, and this lady came to one of my lectures. She says, Malcom, one of the leading surgeons at the hospital is off his work. And I said, well, it's a stressful job. Oh, no, you don't understand. I said, pray tell me. So this is what she said to me. This leading surgeon, very, very eminent man, was walking down a hospital corridor, and he stopped and he saw an elderly man, an elderly gentleman. Are you okay, sir? I think so. I'm not really sure. And at that point, the surgeon's pager went off, and he said, excuse me, sir, hold on. And the pager said, you're wanted in the resource room. So he turned round to say cheerio to this old man, but he was no longer there. Presumably went through the swing doors you get in the hospitals. So you may know where I'm going with this story, but there is a twist.
I think so, yeah.
There is a twist. So he walked into the resource room, and who's lying on the bed, bare chested, with the paddles in his chest to bring him back to life? The very man he saw in the corridor. So what they did, let's look at the closed circuit television cameras. Let's do that. So they looked at the television. You could see the doctor walking down the hospital corridor, stopping, looking, and talking to nothing at all. Nothing at all. Wasn't picked up on the CCTV cameras. And this is the problem we have, folks, is people want answers. People want proof. Is it video proof? Is it photographic proof? We're living in the Steven Spielberg age of DreamWorks laboratory, where anything can be manipulated onto a computer to look the real deal. But here's the rub. That same technology can be applied to see if it was just a string or a little fishing gut holding a model of a UFO. We get all these apps with putting ghostly images onto your phones. So technology is, I wouldn't say it's destroying what we're doing, because you can use that same technology, as I said, to unmask if it's fraudulent. So it works both ways, yeah.
Right. One of the things that E.T. taught me literally is that while we're here, we're supposed to know all that is knowable before we proceed to judge anything or decide what it is. That knowledge, absolute knowledge, not belief, knowledge is the key to opening up our minds to learning what is right, wrong, true, not true, etc. Okay. And E.T.'s number one wish for humanity here is to wake up to our abilities, because that's the one tool that you have, because you're able to consciously perceive what truth really is. You can see through the energy of everything, okay? Technology is not always our friend, as you've so pointed out, and today it is rampantly bad. AI is pretty much in control of it always, and it's a nightmare, and without these abilities of discernment, of intuition, we're kind of messed up now, and it's really hard to research even almost anything. And there are answers. One of the things that I look for are witnesses. If everybody's experiencing it at the same time, and from their perspective, each of them are honing in on exactly the same thing, and you interview them separately, so nobody can they can't control the narrative. You're looking at some truth there, okay? And then you have to look at all the external factors. What's going on? And you have to really delve into every teeny little aspect and perspective of something before you can go yay or nay. Unfortunately, in this time, in this age right now, this is exactly the problem. Literally. And when I talk to people, and I hope you understand this too. I know you do. You're already thinking it. I don't tell anybody to believe me on anything. If you hear me talking, I want you to understand that you have to do your homework, your due diligence. It's totally up to you whether you understand what I'm saying is true or not. It's totally up to you to understand the technology that I'm talking about, or anything, any of it. Other than that, I'm just sitting here spinning yarns, and I don't want people to go that way with me. I don't want you to blindly believe.
There's a difference, like you say, between belief and knowledge.
Knowledge is the important thing, and us learning to be knowledgeable is the important thing. That's why we're here. That's why we're supposed to be helping each other with this. And what you do is fantastic, because you're looking for knowledge. Okay.
Well, I do the very, very same as you, Dolly. Every time I come off the stage, before I come off the stage, I say, ladies and gentlemen, don't believe a word I say. For me, it's true. I've researched it. Check it out yourself. Find out as much as you can about these subjects. Yes, there's a lot of nonsense out there. Get rid of all the nonsense.
Right.
And you'll be surprised, as I am, with the wealth of data regarding UFOs, ghost poltergeists, etc. Right. But you're absolutely correct, people have got to learn themselves, And I can't believe, and I'm sure you can't believe either, that the people in the street are just thinking about doing shopping or going to the mall and stuff like that. Come on.
I know. We're so engrossed in our own minds and our own little fields of reality, that we create for ourselves. And it's, oh man, one of the hardest things I've noticed also, and I don't know if you've done this when you're talking, is I can talk to people for an hour and tell them everything that I can tell them. And then they'll come right back around and they'll ask me questions like they didn't hear me talk. I realize that they've got their own internal dialogue going on, and they're overwriting everything that I say. And so now I've started, like when I talk now, I say, look, I want you to think about this. I'm about to give you some information, and I want you to not think about what you're thinking when I'm talking. I want you to really try to hear what I'm saying. Okay. And if you're recording me, that's a good thing, because you can go back and look at it over and over again, so that you reach the narrative that I'm putting forth to you. It gives you information that way. And then you're clear on what you need to go look for as well. And that works out pretty good. Less re-asking me things, or asking me things that I know they clearly heard, or I thought they heard, but they were just yappity in their heads.
Well, we've only got about 5 minutes left, 10 if we push it. But I do want to, again, put up your books here and let everyone know that, what I love about your research, Malcolm, is it's boots on the ground. It's very objective. It's very thorough. You've had your own experiences. It's not enough to just, interview people. You've seen it and done it. So these are all excellent books I can highly recommend.
Well, Preston is impressed because you're a lot like him, just so you know, because you give data. You don't give your opinions, you give data. Okay.
Yeah.
And you research the same way he does. You're looking for answers. You're not trying to conject what you think into it. You're just giving data.
Yeah.
And that's important,
I'm giving data, and I'm also giving other possibilities what could be that, because if I don't give other possibilities, the skeptics will say, oh, did you ask that? Did you do that? So we've got to dot all these. But these books, Paranormal Case Files Volume 1 and the other ones, are packed full of cases that's been told to me over the years by people looking for answers, people who just want to share this knowledge and get it out there. And I'm just a very, very, very small cog in an enormous wheel of paranormal researchers the world over. And I just think I'm just so pleased to be on the show with Preston and yourself, Dolly, because Preston for me is fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. The books that man's put out, oh my goodness me, and it's an education. He's letting people know about, look, have a look at this, see what you make of it, Loch Ness. Loch Ness is a wonderful, wonderful place for me. I was fortunate to go down in the submarine in Loch Ness, and I've spoken to many people that's seen Nessie. It's not a plesiosaur. It's not an ancient prehistoric dinosaur. I think it's probably maybe a large mutated eel or some unknown aquatic species.
Wow.
More on this earth than anybody really knows, and I would not be surprised. I've sort of followed this. I love Scotland. I have roots in Scotland. I have, family. My roots come from Scotland, a lot of them. And so I've always been interested in Loch Ness. And I've seen all the film and I've seen all the naysayers and blah, 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 blah. And there was one group that did a thing, it was a couple of years ago, and they actually were underwater, like you said, and got some film of something looking at it.
I remember that, yeah.
Oh, that blew my mind. I was like, yeah, there you go.
Dr. Robert Rhines.
Yes, yes. And that impressed the heck out of me. I mean, I was like, well, there you go. There is something. And I hope somebody gets some really, I don't want it to be harmed though. That's the thing. People are crazy and they'll do terrible things just to prove it's alive. They'll bring it up dead. And you don't want that. This is a living being in the water, and
we have some books upcoming, Robin, that you can give us a little, Robert?
Yeah, well,
or Malcom, sorry.
I'm working on another book at the moment, Testimonies of the Supernatural, which is a collection of reports that I've had from many people the world over. And I'm looking forward to getting into that. I'll be speaking at the Scottish UFO and Paranormal Conference in Glasgow University next month in June. And our society, I've got a lot of sky watches planned for various locations. And it's wonderful for us to bring interested people to these sky watches to look what can be seen normally, satellites traversing aircraft, to things that should not be there. So we just love the subject, as you lovely guys do as well.
Yeah, well, we've got all your links in the show notes so people can follow up.
Your books are available on Amazon, right?
That's correct, Dolly, yes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Right.
I put the links also into the show notes. So to make it easy for people, we want them to do their research.
Yes, go get these. They're awesome. So. All
right. So any last words? We got a minute or two.
All I would say is just keep doing the fantastic work that you're doing, Preston. We in the UK really appreciate the books that you're putting out for the public. And Dolly, it's the first day I met you, my love. Absolutely fascinating lady you are. And I'd love to speak to you for many, many hours, because people like you enhance what I want to learn myself, because I don't know all. I'm learning all the time. I know next to nothing. But when you meet people throughout your life, you're learning from them as well. And that's what makes this journey so fascinating, by speaking to like-minded souls.
I want to talk to everybody. That's right. I want to learn. It's not just my job. I stayed back. When ET left, I was given options, okay, because I was coming out. Just so you know, they told me to contact Preston. They gave me his name. Absolutely gave me his name. I looked him up. I was like impressed, because I had been looking before that, and I wasn't finding anybody that I would trust with the kind of information that I have. And then, boop, there he is. And he's a lot like you. I love talking to researchers. I love talking to people who have experienced. I want to hear all the stories, because I didn't pay any attention to that. They kind of kept me away from it while I was training and flying. They didn't want me influenced by anything here. And when I wanted to come out, that's when I got briefed and said, okay, you have to deal with this now, because it's a little crazy over here. And I'm wading through it. And it is just so important for us to open this dialogue, start giving each other information that we can all digest and work through ourselves and learn all that is learnable about this. That's the only way. It's the only way. And one of the things that's important for us to do is we have to prove it to ourselves. You can't believe what somebody says from somebody's best friend's brother's dog or neighbor. Okay? That's gossip. And gossip is never repeated correctly. Okay? Contacting the original experiencer. And that's what you do. When Preston says boots on the ground, that's exactly what he means. You're going to the source. That's important. Let the source speak. Don't do heretical stuff that people are saying, because they'll all get it wrong all the time, all day long. And that gives you more information so that you can research that, And so I would love to be able to communicate with you on a regular basis. That would be fun.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Malcom. You are fantastic. We absolutely adore you. Amazing.
Yes, I'm glad to have met you. I'm really glad. Thank you for coming.
A real honor and delight.
Is that possible? Like right after your expo, I would love to hear about that. You can come on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't get to talk really about Loch Ness or some bunch of your other own experiences. And
So much to say. So much to say.
All right. Well, thanks again, Malcolm. We truly appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know we couldn't bring up your questions in chat, but we'll be there. So
Yes,
it'll be.
We invite you to, Malcolm, while we're live with the show. We'll give you the date that it airs. You can be in chat with us and answer questions. We have
Do you want to stay up in the middle of the night? 3 a.m. or something, I think it would be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you, everyone. Truly appreciate it. And I guess, Dolly, it's time to take us out.
Malcolm, when I stop recording, I want you to stay on for a minute with us.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to us on this beautiful Monday night that we're broadcasting to you from the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 in the beautiful city of New Orleans in Louisiana, and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 105.3 FM. We are on Facebook, we are on Roku, we are on Rumble, and we are on YouTube. Wherever you choose to view us, please do. We love you. Mwah. Namaste, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.